Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Some exciting news today. Now that the pandemic seems to be winding down, I've decided that it is time to follow my dreams. So I'm packing up here, I'm heading to New York, I'm gonna turn this channel into a daily vlog, and hopefully I'll become the next Casey Neistat. Is it just me, or does anyone else wish Casey Neistat still posted videos? I'm kidding, obviously, about becoming a vlogger. I have no idea how that guy kept up that kind of output. It's totally insane. But seriously, the guy is an absolute legend. I used to love watching his vlogs, and honestly, they were one of the first things I remember finding on YouTube that made me think, hey, this guy is pretty good. Maybe there's more to this YouTube thing than just animal videos and sports highlights. Over the last year or whatever of the pandemic, I started looking back through his channel, and it reminded me how great his videos were. I watched a bunch of them, and now I'm more sure than ever that even though he makes things look really easy, there's nothing accidental about Casey's success, so I decided to try and figure out why. People are always surprised when I tell them that I watch more YouTube than real TV. I think that as a documentary filmmaker, they expect me to come home and want to watch nothing but the very best docs out there, but the truth is actually kind of the opposite. I find my mind is usually so tired about thinking about the documentary process that after a long day of shooting or sitting in front of my computer writing pitches, I want something a little easier to watch. But that doesn't mean I want garbage either, and that's part of the reason I first started paying attention to Casey. If you watch one of Casey's videos, at first glance you might think they're just the result of casually filming whatever happens over the course of a random day as a YouTuber. But as I watched a ton of Casey's videos over the years, I'm positive that's not what's going on. Actually, I'm pretty sure he's one of the most talented and intentional filmmakers ever to do YouTube, and what he's doing is way less by accident than it seems. Let me explain why I think so. I'm Luke Forsyth, documentary cinematographer, filmmaker, and photojournalist, and this is the filmmaking of Casey Neistat. Everyone who likes YouTube knows who Casey is. The guy rose to fame as the godfather of vlogging, and he more or less created a new genre of media that is now one of the most popular YouTube formats. At the same time, he created a huge brand around himself and became one of YouTube's first mainstream breakout stars. If I'm being honest, I used to look at Casey's imperfect production style and think that his success was maybe a fluke, instead of recognizing the really sophisticated production and storytelling techniques that he was using. But the more I watched his videos, the more I could see that Casey's rise to the top was actually the result of years of filmmaking experience, and that everything he did was part of an overall vision. Listen to Casey talk here.
Go. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a filmmaker. To me, there was no higher artistic achievement than that.
Once I became more aware of what he was doing, I stopped seeing accidental success, and I saw the trained filmmaker instead. So what filmmaking techniques does Casey use that helped him to stand out? And how can you apply them to your own work? In this video, I'm going to break down 3 of the main filmmaking techniques that I've noticed Casey using that make his movies so good. If you start looking into Casey's background, you can see pretty quickly that he wasn't born knowing that he wanted to be the king of YouTube. He actually had an HBO show and even directed an indie movie that won the Spirit Award at Sundance. All of this means that for the start of his career, he was fully a mainstream filmmaker. Take it from me, these are not typical results for most filmmakers, and he was clearly taken seriously by his peers as a professional. He was at the height of his success when he started thinking that maybe YouTube could be a serious platform for filmmaking, and I don't think he was at all sure it would work out. In his own words, when I left HBO to become a YouTuber, it felt like such a stigma. It was such a lame thing to do. Once he made the jump to YouTube, he essentially continued to make the same home movie style productions that he'd done on his TV show. But where the HBO show hadn't been particularly well received, I mean, I think it was canceled after 1 season, this format was a perfect fit for YouTube, and it blew up. But how much of this success was the result of being at the right place at the right time, and how much was due to the same motivated techniques that professional filmmakers use in big budget productions? If you ask Casey himself, he might say something like this.
Filmmaking was this exclusive club. It was for the chosen few. So I started to think, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I'm just not meant to be a filmmaker. Maybe I'm not allowed to be a filmmaker. Maybe it's unrealistic. Maybe I have to find something else to do with my life.
But when I really started to break down his videos from the point of view of a full-time professional documentary filmmaker, I started to understand that his success was no accident. From what I could see, there are at least 3 obvious professional filmmaking techniques that Casey uses. Even if they seem like casual home videos, they're not, and we're going to take a look at each of them and how you can apply them to your own projects. Before we get into that, you might be wondering how Casey even got to be working with HBO in the first place if all he does is sit around and make home movies. Speaking from my own personal experience, and even having shot a little bit for HBO as a freelancer, getting your own idea picked up and made into an HBO series is no joke. I mean, this is a network that produced The Sopranos, Game of Thrones, The Wire, some of the biggest culturally loved TV shows of all time. When he started posting to YouTube in 2010, he'd had successes with videos about things like chat roulette and the New York subway, but I really don't think anyone expected quite how big his channel was gonna get. But there was one thing that Casey had going for him that most people on the platform didn't, and that's technique number one. Casey is a master of storytelling. In 2011, when Casey first started getting really active, YouTube was still finding its legs. People would upload anything, and a lot of it was extremely low quality and hard to watch. Most of the time, you just stuck with it until you got the information you needed and then closed the tabs as soon as possible. Casey's videos, by contrast, are gripping all the way through, and even though they seem to be about nothing, they manage to hold my interest almost every time. For a story to be interesting, most of the time it needs these two basic things. The first one is a structure, which means a beginning, a middle, and an end, and the second is a character who wants something or is going through a crisis moment. That might seem overly simple, and for sure it is. There are exceptions and many other ways that you can think about storytelling, but I don't want to go too deeply into storytelling mechanics here. Let's save that for another video. I'll just say that most good stories need at least these two things to work. A structure keeps the audience interested by building tension over time, and the character gives them someone to relate to as they go on an adventure to get what they want. It's one of the most understandable human experiences. We've all wanted something, and we've all had things happen to us that we didn't want to deal with. People might go to YouTube for bite-sized chunks of entertainment rather than long-form TV, but that doesn't mean that they don't want to be told a story. By giving them both a character to relate to and a story structure to follow, Casey makes it as easy as possible to get invested in what's happening and therefore keep watching. If we look at his video, Bike Lanes, I think it was called, the one where he goes around crashing into cars parked in the streets of New York City, it follows a super traditional storytelling structure, even though it's condensed into 3 minutes. He starts out, he's living his ordinary life, riding his bike, when something happens that disrupts everything. Basically, he gets a ticket. That starts him on an adventure that he really doesn't want to be on as he tries to find justice and beat the bad guy, which in this case means exposing the stupidity of his ticket and just maybe getting his money back. The resolution comes when he crashes into a police car parked in the bike lane, therefore proving to the world that the rules are completely senseless. He doesn't actually win in the sense of killing the bad guy, but since his aim is mostly to expose the stupidity of the fine, it's a victory. He doesn't get his money back that we know of, but he's proved his point and now can return to his normal life. This sort of plot can be seen again and again in movies from Lord of the Rings to John Wick. Casey tells us the story in barely 3 minutes, and we're hooked the whole time. The millions of views it's racked up prove it. He does this sort of thing over and over in his vlogs, and it's one of the main reasons why they're so watchable. Some small mission or goal will come up in the course of his day, and he'll bring us on a journey as he overcomes the obstacle or opposition. In one of his most watched videos, the commercial he made for Nike, I think it was called Make It Count, he starts the video with a problem in his life. He has to make a commercial for Nike and he doesn't want to do things the conventional way. So he sets out on a risky journey where he throws caution to the wind and does things his own way by spending the whole production budget on a trip around the world with his friend Max. In the end, he realizes that the point is the journey itself, and he's wiser and better for it. It's implied that Nike is happy with what he made and the risk paid off. If it was just a story of how Casey got a Nike commercial and made a bunch of money and did it in the traditional way, there would have been no learning and no change in the character, i.e. Casey's, outlook on life, and it wouldn't have been such a powerful story. Even though his storytelling is a major factor that keeps people watching, the stories are pretty basic, so if they were visually flat, no one would watch. This brings me to the second thing I notice about Casey's videos, specifically his cinematography, and that's his great use of establishing shots. At its most basic level, an establishing shot is a wide or landscape or exterior of a building that shows the audience where a scene or action is taking place. Establishing shots give context and scale to stories, and as a documentary DP, I always have to remember to get them for every location we film in. If we shoot a 3-hour scene in a drug lab, say, like I did for National Geographic's Blood on the Wall, audiences need to see a big wide of the area so they have a sense of where we are. If the scene plays out entirely inside one location, but we never see that wider picture, it can be confusing and claustrophobic. Casey uses the city of New York as the background for most of his stories, and he's constantly mixing in these establishing shots. Sometimes he does it with time lapses, sometimes with a drone, but you always kind of know where you are in one of Casey's videos. Amateur filmmakers often get fixated on the action and forget to step back and get a wide of the location. So Casey's consistent use of establishers mark him as a pro to me. You can easily apply this to your own work, whether you just want to vlog like Casey or you want to shoot hard-hitting documentaries or feature films, or really anything for that matter. Get establishing shots of every location you shoot in and you'll be happy when you get to the edit. I've been shooting stills and video for more than 10 years and I still sometimes forget. So the fact that Casey will often get multiple establishers of locations just proves how much thought he's putting into his filmmaking, even if it comes off as rough. Even when you know where you are in a story, it's when you really dig into the individual beats of each vlog that you see Casey for the professional filmmaker that he is. His whole style is designed to be off the cuff and disorganized, but behind the scenes, I'm guessing he's a pretty focused guy. It might seem like he's just recording bites of whatever moments pop in front of his camera, but he's actually putting a lot more thought into his cinematography than that. When I film documentaries, I need to be thinking about more than just tracking the action like a sports cameraman. I have to think about what the editor needs later to cut together a compelling scene. In documentaries, I might film someone for an hour talking in their kitchen, but in the end we only want to use 3 or 4 parts of what that person said. If I just stayed in one place and let the action happen in front of me, it would be impossible to edit and extremely boring. On YouTube, where holding the audience's shorter attention span is even more of an issue, this becomes really important. To give editors enough variety of angles and shots, cinematographers film a scene from a variety of different angles. Then, later, the editor can choose what fits the story best. In Hollywood, it's called coverage, and it's literally built into the storyboards. When I started out in photojournalism and later documentaries, it was taught to me as working the scene. Whatever you want to call it, working the scene is the third professional technique that Casey uses to make his videos better. It might seem rough and chaotic, but he's taken the time to move the camera multiple times to give himself choices later on. This is exactly what I would do when filming a documentary. I cover the main action and then move around to capture as many different angles and shot types as I can. If you take the time to work a scene rather than just hold one angle, you'll make your life so much easier when it comes to editing. Cutting around to different angles and showing smaller details that we can't see in the wide shots, if done well, can really lift your projects from flat and slow to dynamic and interesting. Look, there are a ton of reasons why Casey has been successful on YouTube, but the way he mixes professional filmmaking techniques into his seemingly casual home video style definitely helped rise him to the top of the platform as fast as he did. He might look like he's pulling it off effortlessly, but I'm almost positive that's not what's going on. He's a highly experienced filmmaker who thinks carefully about what he's doing and works extremely hard. If you can match this work ethic and add in professional filmmaking techniques like he does, your videos will definitely have a better chance of standing out from the noise. Thanks for watching. And if you'd be interested in seeing more of these cinematography breakdowns of well-known YouTubers or filmmakers, let me know in the comments down below.